Ivan Pavlov, the dog experiments that rewrote human psychology. A priest's son in rural Russia, 1849 to 1869. Before we dive into the life and work of Ivan Pavlov, it's important to understand how his groundbreaking experiments changed the way we think about human behavior. Known for his studies with dogs, Pavlov uncovered fundamental principles of learning and conditioning that still influence psychology, medicine, education, and marketing today. This story traces his journey from a curious boy in rural Russia to a pioneering scientist whose discoveries reshaped our understanding of the mind and behavior. Let's explore the remarkable life behind the famous experiments. In the dusty town of Ryazan, 200 kilometers southeast of Moscow, young Ivan Pavlov lived between two worlds. Mornings were spent studying scripture under his father, Peter Dmitrievich Pavlov, the local Orthodox priest. Afternoons found him by the Trubezh River, observing frogs and stray dogs with the same intensity others reserve for prayer. The Pavlov household was poor but intellectually alive. Ivan's mother, Varvara Ivanovna, though uneducated, nurtured a rare scientific curiosity uncommon for women in 1850s Russia. Dinner conversations leapt from biblical parables to why leaves change color, creating fertile ground for a future scientist. At the Ryazan Ecclesiastical Seminary, teenage Pavlov stood apart. While classmates memorized psalms, he secretly read revolutionary works like Sekhanov's Reflexes of the Brain, which proposed that even human thought obeyed biological laws. His notebooks reveal meticulous observations of animal behavior, foreshadowing his life's work. In 1869, Pavlov made a defining choice. After reading Darwin's newly translated works, the 20-year-old abandoned theological studies, boarding a train to St. Petersburg with only a suitcase of books and his father's disappointed silence. The Making of a Scientific Mind, 1870 to 1890. St. Petersburg in 1870 was a hotbed of scientific revolution. At the university's physiology department, Pavlov apprenticed under Professor Elie Kayon, a pioneer of experimental methods. Here he embraced a guiding principle: the tongue is the enemy of the eye, meaning observation must always outweigh theory. Pavlov's early research focused on pancreatic nerves, involving surgeries so precise they remain models today. Working in unheated labs, he sometimes performed 12-hour operations by candlelight. Fellow students joked he could suture blood vessels blindfolded, a skill honed by practicing on frog tendons during lectures. Financial hardship nearly ended his career before it began. For years, Pavlov and his wife Serafima lived in poverty, often surviving on bread and tea. In a desperate 1884 letter to the university, he confessed, "I have sold my last coat to buy dog food for experiments. This sacrifice would soon yield groundbreaking results." By 1890, now leading his own lab at the Imperial Medical Academy, Pavlov pioneered chronic experiments where animals survived surgeries for long-term study. This innovation allowed observations never before recorded, including strange psychic secretions in dogs that would transform science forever. Pavlov's lab notebooks from 1891 tell the story. Page after page recorded digestive juices, until an odd note. Dog number 27 salivated at assistant's footsteps before food presentation. While most scientists dismissed this as a nuisance, Pavlov saw a revolution. He designed now legendary experiments. Dogs heard metronomes chosen for their steady tempo exactly 30 seconds before feeding. After 20 repetitions, the metronome alone triggered salivation. Pavlov went further, proving these conditioned reflexes could be generalized, responding to similar sounds, discriminated, learning to tell stimuli apart, and extinguished, fading without reinforcement. The 1904 Nobel Prize honored his digestive research, but history remembers the side discovery. As Pavlov quipped, "I gave them my stomach, but they got my nerves instead." Political turmoil nearly destroyed his work during the 1905 revolution. When soldiers ransacked his lab, Pavlov stood guard over his dogs, declaring, "You'll shoot me before my life's work." The act so impressed a young Leon Trotsky that he secured government protection for the research. The Bolshevik Revolution brought terror to Russian academics, but Pavlov thrived. Lenin personally exempted him from political purges, calling his work vital to the new Russia. Pavlov repaid this by openly criticizing communist policies, once telling Stalin, "If you understood conditioning, you wouldn't starve peasants into compliance." His 1920s Tower of Silence took experimentation to new heights. This soundproof lab floating on rubber cushions to eliminate vibration proved conditioning affected complex behaviors like anxiety. Pavlov's late research on experimental neuroses in dogs laid the foundation for modern PTSD treatments. Even in his 80s, Pavlov kept a brutal schedule: early morning walks with his dogs at 5 a.m., 12-hour lab days, and legendary Wednesday Colloquia, where scientists debated until midnight. His final paper, drafted weeks before his 1936 death at 86, explored how conditioning shapes political beliefs, a concept eerily relevant today. Pavlov's discoveries did more than revolutionize psychology. They reshaped how we understand behavior itself. His work revealed that much of what we do, feel, and believe is shaped by learned associations, often outside our conscious awareness. This insight opened doors to new therapies for mental health, from behavior modification to exposure therapy, helping millions overcome fears and addictions. Moreover, Pavlov's legacy extends beyond science into everyday life. Consider how habits form. The sound of a notification, the aroma of coffee, or even a familiar tune can trigger automatic responses rooted in conditioning. Marketers harness these principles to influence choices, while educators use them to reinforce learning. Even political campaigns tap into conditioned responses to sway public opinion. Yet Pavlov's story is also a testament to resilience and integrity. He pursued truth despite poverty, political upheaval, and personal risk. His courage to protect his research and challenge authority reminds us that scientific progress often demands more than intellect. It requires conviction and perseverance. As you go about your day, take a moment to notice the subtle cues shaping your behavior. In doing so, you honor the spirit of Pavlov's work, a reminder that understanding ourselves begins with observing the world around us, and the signals we respond to, often without realizing it. From your morning coffee ritual to smartphone notifications, Pavlov's principles shape your daily life. Therapists use them to treat phobias. Educators apply them in classrooms. Marketers, well, let's just say they've studied Pavlov very carefully. But beyond the science, Pavlov's story teaches courage to challenge dogma, protect truth amid chaos, and recognize that great discoveries often come from noticing what others dismiss. If this deep dive into scientific history made you rethink your own habits, hit like and subscribe, and share in the comments, where have you spotted Pavlovian conditioning in your life?